This is the programmer Owl, and in this video I am going to go over an Edabit Python challenge called Fix Basic Calculator. And if you've seen my other videos about buggy code, this one's very similar. It's even by the same author as those other buggy code problems. And this one is basically a function for a basic calculator, and you got to make sure you don't have zero or a number being divided by zero, and you got to make sure that no, unknown operators are being included. So that's the main purpose of looking at this code, to make sure it functions as a basic calculator. So there's a bajillion different ways that you can tackle this problem, and that's what I've seen in code just in general. Like, just the way that I do it doesn't mean it's the most correct or the best. It just is the one that makes logical sense to me, and maybe it doesn't work for you, but maybe what I'm saying and the way I talk through it helps you figure out a different way or different mode of solving this problem. But this is how I tackled the problem. Now, this result equals 0 and returning the result. Right away I see that there's a problem because it's saying the result is 0, but everything else is being returned, adding or subtracting or dividing or multiplying or whatever. But at the very end, if none of these go through, then it's just going to return 0. And what they really want it to return is none. If none of these other things can go through, then you should return none. So I would say you could probably change the result to none, or change, instead of return a plus b, you could say result equals a plus b, and then at the very end do return result. But that seemed like a lot for me to do. I didn't want to rewrite all this code just to satisfy this, variable that we've created. So I'm just going to get rid of result, because when I tested it, it was not something that was needed. So looking at the syntax of the function, we have the name. A is the first number, O stands for operator, and then B is the second number. Another thing I noticed right off the bat is we're just looking to see what the operator is, basically. So we're just checking, is it adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing? So we don't need an else if. We can just do if. And then if you look, you notice some of these are not streamlined. That looks like a capital O, or maybe even a 0. No, that one, last one up there was a capital O. This one was a 0. So I have to change them all to lowercase o's. So that's the first part. So let me walk through and make sure this makes sense. So if the operator equals plus, then add the two numbers. That's correct. You don't have to worry about zeros in adding and subtracting. If the operator does not equal the minus sign, return a minus b. Well, that doesn't make sense, because if it does not equal minus, it could be, multiplying, it could be dividing, it could be, it could be a lot of different things. So I want to make sure it equals. So if the operator equals the minus sign, we're going to subtract. This next one says if the operator does not equal the division, or b does not equal 0, return a divided by b. Well, we want to do division here, so that's another logical error. It should equal the dividing sign. So if O equals division, or b equals 0. So if b equals 0, it's going to divide, but we know that if we divide a top number, or a numerator, divided by a denominator of 0, it's going to be undefined. So this also doesn't make logical sense. I think we should change the or to and. So if the operator is division and b equals 0, divided. That still doesn't make sense. If b does not equal 0, so then we can do the problem. So as long as it's division, the operation symbol, and the denominator is not 0, then we can go ahead and go through with this problem. And then the last one looks pretty good. If O equals multiplication symbol, then you can multiply. Now, what do we do if none of these, if the operator is some kind of weird symbol like a question mark, or if b equals 0? Well, I could do an else, and that'll return none. Now, here is kind of where I made a little blooper at first. I put this in quotation marks because I thought it was going to be a string that was returned, but in Python, you can just type the word none. And another thing, because I've done, different languages throughout the last couple of years of doing different classes and whatnot, and the and symbol can be like the ampersand or double ampersand, but in Python, or at least for these Edabit challenges, it is just the word and or. So you use the actual words. And that's where I find Google incredibly helpful, especially W3 Schools has been a good resource that I've used, because sometimes I forget, like the little symbols, because they can vary from language to language. So as you're, going through your classes and whatnot, just always do a quick Google check. I would type in and operator and then the language of what you're trying to communicate, and in Python or Java or whatnot. So hopefully this should all work. So like I said, I took the result out. You could keep the result, but it's just like a lot of extra wordiness to add. It worked just fine without using result as a variable. And so that is how you fix a basic calculator.